Welcome back to Third Man In. I'm Zack Phillips, and in tonight's post-game breakdown, we're going to be reacting to game number 48 of the Toronto Maple Leafs regular season, losing here tonight to the New York Islanders 3-2 on a late goal by the Isles to take the lead, taking the Leafs to 25, 15, and 8 on the season so far. So we'll break down what happened here tonight. We'll break down what's gone on since the break, since these guys had some time off here, come back to Toronto, get themselves ready for tonight's game, and unfortunately lose this one to the Islanders here tonight. We'll break down what went on in the game here as well. For those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. For those of you who are coming back, if you've been here before, if you've just seen it, if you've passed by, whatever it is, however you're finding this, welcome back. We appreciate you taking the time to watch this with us here this fine Monday afternoon following the All-Star weekend. So thank you guys very much. If you are watching right now, you haven't already, please hit that like button, subscribe here to the channel, turn on notifications so you get notified every single time that we go live for watch-alongs, post-game reactions, or new videos come out here on this channel. You don't want to miss any of those. So please hit that like button, subscribe here to the channel. I do appreciate all the support, but let's get into it for tonight's games. And as we do, if you do want to call into the show, you can message me on Discord. As always, that is an option for those of you who are looking to call in as well. If you can't do it through Discord, if you don't have me on there, you can add me on Twitter as well at Zack Phil, ZackPhill, as well as on Instagram at Zack Phillips, ZackPhill_. Find it on there. Send me a message. I'll get the link over to you so that you can call into the show, give your thoughts on tonight's game, give your thoughts on what's gone on throughout this season, where this team is as we approach the deadline, because we did see some conversation during the panel there tonight as well that I'm sure is going to get brought up throughout the course of the stream tonight. So I would be happy to talk about any of that stuff here in tonight's stream. But look, the bottom line is I just don't, no matter how this post-game goes and no matter what you guys think, the one thing that I'm going to stand by throughout the entire thing is that the excuse of rest versus rust I don't think is valid here for this Leafs team, because the Islanders had the same experience. They're coming off the same break. They've been away for the same amount of days. There is none of that. You can't look at this and say, oh, well, the Leafs are rusty, so it's fine that you lost this one. I mean, I'm not going to go crazy here tonight and on this team or anything. I do think there is going to be some slop from both sides of it. But that being said, you can't sit here and say, well, the Leafs were blank. The Leafs were tired. The Leafs were rusty. The Leafs weren't in unison. The Islanders dealt with the exact same thing. And on top of that, by the way, the Islanders were actually having to come into Toronto to play this one tonight. Toronto had the luxury of being at home following this weekend and hosting the Isles coming back from this break. So that's just not going to fly. We're not going to accept that excuse here on the stream. We're not going to accept that for what went on in this game. It's not valid. You're NHL players, and 4 of your guys actually were at this weekend compared to the Islanders, who had 1 of their guys. So you even had more guys sticking around the city, being on the ice, practicing, whatever it is. Now, as far as tonight's game goes, there's one thing to me that stuck out. I'm seeing some people in the chat talking about kind of the other way. I don't know. Maybe I'm out to lunch here tonight. Maybe I'm on an island. Maybe I've just was looking for something that I did see. I see some people complaining about Nylander's game in the chat right now. I'm not really there. Now, as compared to where he was at prior to signing that contract versus what's happened after, yes, obviously the point production is going to be an initial point of conversation where you're going to say, what the hell happened to this guy? It seems like he fell off a cliff. It seems like he can't get anything done. Now, after he signed the contract, I do agree that there were a couple of games where he just looked out of it. He looked, whether it was lofty, if he looked unaware of what was going on, or just behind the play a little bit. You can say any of those, and I'll probably agree with you, because there were a few games where he just didn't look that good. It started to transition away, and he started to play a lot better as we got closer to the All-Star break. I just think that the production wasn't there, which, again, it's unfortunate. And for an $11.5 million guy, I guess, at next year, that's not really acceptable, not something you're looking for. But in general, I think he's actually been playing okay. This game here tonight, I thought Willie was really dangerous. Like, I felt like every time he had the puck, he was creating an opportunity. He was finding ways to maintain offensive zone pressure. He was pinning the Islanders back in their zone. He was taking advantage of plays in the corners and on the boards. He was winning battles. He was winning some races. He created a bunch. He just didn't have the finish. It felt like him and Bertuzzi were just kind of in the same boat of being snake bitten here tonight, because even Bertuzzi, for me, I thought played really well. And JT, until he scored that goal, he probably could have walked away from this one, and you would have just looked at that line and painted them with the same picture and said, those guys showed up. They looked pretty good here tonight. They looked energized. They looked determined. They just didn't score. And over 82 games, that's not acceptable. But in a vacuum, if you're going to look at tonight's game, I think it's fine. I think that they played pretty well here tonight. Obviously, you'd like to see a little bit more production. I'm glad JT gets on the board, but I really can't come away from this one looking at that line and kind of getting to the point where I'm seeing people in the chat being like, Goudreau 2.0 or Nylander vacation, whatever. Like, that's not reality here tonight. I think that second line was very good. I think they were really good from the beginning. I think that they were generating a bunch. They just didn't capitalize on their opportunities. I don't know. I'm fine with their level of play here tonight. I just want to see them score goals and be able to cap things off, because that's obviously what they're going to be paid for. Now, that's kind of going to be the same conversation as it goes for Bertuzzi when it's the whole season here as well. This is another thing. People are complaining about Bertuzzi and the signing of Bertuzzi. I mean, this is a guy you're looking for when it comes to the playoffs. That's the type of player you want on your team. That's the type of player last year we said you want the Leafs to go and acquire Bertuzzi, bring a guy like that in at the deadline. I think he's going to be fine. It looks like he's playing really well. I don't know. I'm like Nylander. He had the second most expected goals here tonight on the Leafs. Tavares had the third most. Matthews obviously had the first. He generated a ton tonight here as well. This is all according to Money Puck. I'm looking at the expected goals, all situations. Look, I mean, go 5-on-5 here. They're the same. They're the leaders as well. Fleury adjusted. They're, again, the leaders here. Like, these guys, I think that they played well. They created opportunities. They just didn't get it done. They just didn't get it done. I don't know. I'm just saying this more for the second line as a whole. I think from start to finish, that second line deserves praise for what they did here tonight. I think that they played really well. I think they generated a lot. I'm just kind of in a spot looking at the point production. I get it. Yeah. Massidakis, Leafs may not make the playoffs, Zach. I get it. I get that I get we're saying that. I'm just saying in general, when you're talking about a player like Bertuzzi, that's the player you want in the playoffs. You can't just build your team to put up tons of points throughout a season and then expect it to just work come playoff time. You've heard it a million times before. You heard it in Washington when they built those teams, when you're talking about the fact that you build two different teams within one. You build one for the regular season, and you're building one for the playoffs. You're going to have players in your organization who are not going to be standout players all season long, but they're going to be the important players when it comes to the playoff time, when it comes to what matters the most, because those are the guys that are going to bring it. And unfortunately, from what we've seen from this Leafs team in the past, is that they've kind of been brought in too late. They've been brought in and tried to just be forced into the character and the fabric of this team that realistically wasn't ever there. It was kind of mashed into something that just had not been established for the entire season. And then you just see it kind of fizzle out because the other guys that were already here pre-existing, they don't adopt it. The guys who came in here new, they're trying to now transition to actually just mold into what the other guys are because, first of all, Sheldon Keefe seems to hate those players. Like Bertuzzi, Domi, these guys can't get in his good graces under any circumstances. I don't know whether it's just because of the production. I know that there's some stuff that we're watching where it's like, yeah, okay, there's some failed assignments, but it's also like the other stuff that they do well, he just kind of goes out there and neuters them. He cuts their balls off and says, you can't be you. He wants them to play like this Maple Leaf style of hockey that he's established or the organization has established. Maybe it's not specifically of him, but if you're going to say, oh, okay, yeah, you're going to be this gritty, tough player that you're bringing in, and you want this guy to come in here and play that way, you can't tell them, like, oh, you can't go and poke at goalies. You can't go start scrums and piss guys off just because you're here on the Maple Leafs now. Like, then guys aren't going to be able to play their games. Then they're not going to be themselves. That's why it feels like we've seen other guys in the past as well come here and just not work. Yeah, and away from society, Bertuzzi did have an awesome game tonight. I thought he played really well. I wish he could have scored. I thought he played really well. I know that the result wasn't there, and I'm always the person to kind of go on about the result and what happened. I'm just saying that there were a lot of moments in this game tonight from a lot of these different guys that I think was genuinely pretty good. And like that second line specifically, I got no problem with here tonight. I just don't. I know that their goal came from the power play. I'm still pretty happy with what they did. I'm happy with what they did. Simon Benoit, let's talk about that. I see his name coming up a lot in the chat here. It's definitely a player that needs some love. You saw it talked about on the broadcast. We've seen this brought up a ton over on social media over the last couple of weeks. You're seeing him kind of respond to fans and stuff. You see them out there wearing their blue collar stuff. They're trying to get autographs and pucks from Simon Benoit. This is the thing that people fail to understand here with some of this is like, people in Toronto, for the most part, will love players who do simple things and do their jobs. I think one of the problems that we have is that this fan base oftentimes gets way too confused with what to expect out of players. And I think that sets us up for failure with expectations that are put on some of these guys. Tyler Bertuzzi should be producing more than he is right now. 100%. I understand that. But I don't think that he is going to be or ever would be producing at the level that people anticipated him to be in the position that he is. He's just not a 100-point guy. He's not an 80, 90-point guy. He's a 60-point guy who draws penalties, pisses guys off, drives to the net, wins corner battles, creates space, finishes checks, gets in on the forecheck. Like, that's who he is. He's a guy that you want in the playoffs because he's around it. He's always got his nose in it. And now the points aren't coming, but guess what? He's still doing all of the other stuff, and he's doing it relatively effectively. It just hasn't really worked out from a point production standpoint. And I think some of that is his usage. Some of that is his expectation from fan base. Some of it is from the coaching staff and the organization and how they're trying to fit him into this. Like, I'm willing to take lower points on these guys to have them here to be doing the other roles that guys traditionally have not done on this team in years past, because that's not the type of player that the previous general manager was interested in bringing in. Joel Fletcher bringing up a really good point there in the chat, in my opinion. And this is something that I think we're going to get to. It's something that I think people in the chat will continue to talk about. But Bert was great on the Bees last year. His game hasn't changed. It has to be the team / the system. I mean, this is kind of where I get to with a lot of these players. Like, you look at some of these guys and you're like, oh, how all of a sudden does this guy not work? Or why, what a terrible trade to go and get that player. Well, maybe not. Maybe the guy that's running things behind the bench is the one who can't figure out how to use these guys. Maybe the guy that's behind the bench got lucky with these 4 incredible players in Austin Matthews, William Nylander, John Tavares, Mitch Marner, Morgan Riley. Throw 5 if that's what you want to do. Maybe they got lucky with those, and you got lucky with good enough players around them that were just good and never anything exceptional. So that's why the team has been able to perform at the level that it has. And now you get these real hockey players in here, and all of a sudden it's like you can't get things out of them. But six, I don't understand how it could be the players. How could this be the players where you're going to look at and say like, oh, this is the players not having Bertuzzi, like Bertuzzi's fault that all of a sudden he doesn't fit in Toronto. If that's the case, it's because it's his fault because he's too gritty. He's too built for playoff hockey and playoff success. If that's the case, then he shouldn't be on this team because he's too good for this team. In regards to the actual attributes that he brings to helping a team win games. Simone Benoit has seemed to find his groove here in Toronto. Really happy about that. Feels like things are going well alongside Jake McCabe. I like that. But whenever people are sitting here talking about, oh, we're going to make changes. We're going to go and add to this team. What are you going to add? What is it that you're going to add this year at the deadline that's going to push you over the top? What is it that you're going to add? Because I'm hearing people talking about tinker and add smaller pieces. Well, are you going to go and get a bottom six defenseman? Is that a guy who's he replacing? I'm fine with a little bit of tinker here and there, but the guy that's coming out of this lineup is not Benoit for me right now. You got to be looking at a Gio. You got to be looking at Liljegren if you're going to be looking at the lower end. All right. Also, he had chances. He didn't finish. Is he gritty? Is he 6? Bertuzzi too good? Are you high? This guy's useless 99% of the season. Six. I don't know what you're on. Maybe stop hitting the crack pipe before you join the stream. Because those are just outrageous takes. To say the guy's been useless 99% of the season, you either aren't watching or you don't know what you're watching. For those people who come to the chat after or go online and talk about a guy like Tyler Bertuzzi and say like, oh, this guy is not worth it here in Toronto. This guy is not the type of player you want here. Those are the type of people you can very quickly identify who do one of two things. Either they don't watch the game and they just turn on the box score on their phone on the score app after the game and see 0 points and they go, stunk again tonight. Or it's the guy who looks at the game and their eyes are glazed over and they got no clue what's going on. Because to say this, if you watch the game, these guys have a set of balls on them that pretty much no one else here has. You saw within the first couple games of the season, he pretty much got neutered from the style of play that he had from the preseason into the first couple of games. It got taken away. Look how effective that guy was in Boston. Look at the way he played in Detroit. Now, all of a sudden, he gets to Toronto and he forgets how to play hockey, or he was never good at playing hockey. There are other things that can be brought to the table for these guys that you could look at and say, that's a useful player. That's someone who helps this team. That's someone who's going to help the organization. Stop fucking looking at the points and only the points. It's the laziest, most useless narrative of all time to look at. It's the same way that people like this look at Mitch Marner on the other side and say, well, he had this many points in the regular season. That's great. He had this many points in the playoffs. That's great. He had 6 points in 7 games in the playoffs. He scored 5 of them in 1 game. Like, these are the things we look at because people don't understand the actual importance of winning hockey games and the things that you need a part of a team when things get tough, when the going gets tough. You know how much success this team has had? None. So why not bring in these players who have an edge to them? Why not bring in players who are willing to stand in front of the net, stick up for themselves, stick up for their teammates? Why not have these guys around? Stop fucking complaining that the guy doesn't have as many points as you'd like. What did you expect? You were never going to come here and have 80, 90 points. 60, you'd hope for. But you're more looking for the other things that they're going to bring. They're going to be able to bring. I think it's been there. I think there's been a lack of trust from the coaching staff. There's just a lack of that. Also, six. I don't know how you can't call in. You seem to be the only person who can't figure out how to get on the line here. Scared, maybe. I don't know, but it is what it is. Not willing to talk about it. Just fire away in the chat there, brother. We'll take calls. You disagree, you can call in. Just fire off that these guys are useless. It just makes no sense. It makes no sense. I just don't understand what we could be watching at. These are the players that every other team that has any type of fucking success in the playoffs every single year adds. We bring them to Toronto and people throw hissy fits over adding these guys. I cannot comprehend this. What are we looking for? It's like you bring in these third lines and then it's like in the playoffs they're like, oh, they don't score enough. They don't score enough. It's like, well, this is a shutdown line. No shit that they don't fucking score when they go out on the ice. And then it's like the next year you bring in these guys to score goals and you're like, they're not gritty enough. What do you want? What do you want? This is what I don't understand. The expectations of some of these guys at times where what you're anticipating them to be able to do versus what's reality about what they actually can do is insane. It's insane. I don't know. Denver, fair enough. Let's get Pierre Engvall back here. These are the alternatives. Pierre Engvall, Mikheyev, Kerfoot. These are the guys that we've had here before. These are the guys we've had playing in his position before. Those are the guys you would prefer to have here instead? This is what I don't understand. This is what I don't get. I don't know. I don't know. This is just... I genuinely think that this is literally just they're just not allowed to play this way here under this team and the way that the Keefe coaches this. I don't know if it's because they've been told they're going to get penalties. I don't know if it's because he doesn't like that. I don't know. But we're here talking about wanting Sam Lafferty back. This is what we're complaining about right now. We want Sam Lafferty back. That's going to push this over the top. Do we understand how insane this conversation is? To be like, oh, we need Sam Lafferty back. I can't believe where we're at. I don't know. I'm not sure what you guys want to be said about this team anymore at this point. I mean, reading the chat, this is incomprehensible of where we're at. We talked about how this team wasn't great beforehand. We talked about how they're an average team. They're a middle of the pack team. I said numerous times, I don't think you should be going out and trading. I don't think you should be going out and trying to add players at this deadline to go all in and try to make something happen this year, because it's just, it feels abundantly clear that this team just doesn't have it. And the problem is, what I saw here in the chat, this is not really about the makeup of the remainder of the team. Yeah, there's some holes. There's holes every single year. They try to change those. They tried to change it in the offseason. They tried to change it at the trade deadline. Like, they tried to make adjustments. The thing is that this has been and always will be an issue with your top guys. Like, how are they going to perform on a nightly basis? What are you going to get out of them? Are you going to get every shift? And I don't think that this is necessarily a matter of them not playing that well here tonight. I think that the issue is more just a constant culture that is being built now for 8 years that is okay with these types of results. They're okay with having 2 minutes left in the game, 2-2 in your own barn, and just letting the other team come down and score. Having a guy get inside of you where you're not aware of where he is in your own defensive zone. He takes an inside track to your goaltender. He gets a free opportunity at a rebound. This makes no sense. This is who they are. This is the character that is being built and installed into this team for 7 years, 8 now. This is lack of defensive structure potentially from coaching staff, and it is lack of situational awareness from other guys around. Is Willie starting to scare you too? I'm getting some bad vibes. No. Is $11.5 million probably going to be a little bit too much? Probably, but we don't fully know where the salary cap is going to, not next year, but the year after that. The year after that, we don't know where this gravy train will run to. So potentially, this is a contract that could just be slightly overpaid, or maybe it's just like fair value. The reality is, what were you going to do with Nylander? Like, what were you going to do with that? Let's be real. You wanted to sign him in the summer for $8 million, which was probably ridiculous to begin with. Nylander's camp wanted 10 to 11. They couldn't get to that number, and Nylander said, watch, I'm going to go out this season and earn it. He went out and earned it. He put them in a bad position, because the other thing is, he could have just continued to do this the entire remainder of the season. Walked it to free agency, and maybe someone else in free agency said, we'll take a flyer on that at a higher price tag, whatever. He could have just potentially walked away. They wanted to get the deal done. You got it done. I do not think that this is did it for the contract. Oh my God. Guys, honestly, I think this is a complete lazy narrative about this. Like, this is treading water with the same situation as the Bertuzzi conversation here for me now, where it's like, you just look at points, you look at points, he doesn't have points, well, this guy fucking sucks. He's going through a slump. I agree that there was a couple of bad periods of time. A couple of games there after he signed that wasn't great. But I think he's played well after that. Gord, Lafferty was a peripheral player who did fucking nothing here in Toronto. We know somebody whose dad sat beside him in the playoffs watching a Leafs game here in Toronto and said, why is my son out there? He shouldn't be out there. Like, he was fine. I just don't understand how we're talking about Sam Lafferty is the piece. Like, are we out of our minds? Have we actually lost the plot here on what's going on? Yeah, lefty all around. The problem is he goes to the Canucks, he's playing for Rick Tocchet, a real coach. Also, I mean, I guess we're kind of off the conversation of what even happened in tonight's game. You want an answer to why you're going to waste the Stars prime or whatever here, Denver? We're talking about, this is a terrible take. How can you waste these guys prime? Because they're not fucking good. They're not very fucking good. So this was wasted ahead of time. It was wasted by moves Dubas had made. It was wasted by a move where you're signing a guy like John Klingberg coming into the season. It's wasted by re-upping a contract on Sheldon Keefe. It's wasted on signing David Kampf for the money that you did. It's wasted on all of that. So this has effectively gone out the window. This is down the point now where this team, where you are watching an average team with average goaltending, who has below average heart. And it's all driven from the top guys who, as Don is saying there, feels like probably more likely than not have actually wasted their own opportunities because they're the ones who have completely fucked off when it's gotten to playoff time. They're the ones who can't put up points, who can't grit down, who can't win their matchups against the top lines that they go head to head with. They're the ones who can't figure things out when it gets to the most important time. So look at your 82 games all you want. Blame the third and the fourth lines all you want. Go for it. The reality is the guys who struggle to show up more than anybody when it comes to the playoffs is the guys who are paid the most money on this team. Those are the guys who have struggled to do anything. Those are the guys who have struggled to take the team to the next level. Whether it's been in the first rounds or last year in the second round, they're the ones who just didn't show up. And you can say all the bullshit you want about, oh, if they can't score then you need the third lines. Look at what the guys on the other teams have done. Look at the production from the guys in Tampa, the guys in Boston, the guys in Florida last year. Yes, you get help from your depth, 100%. But every time you go out there, it feels like the most dangerous players on the ice is Hedman, Stamkos, Kucherov, Tkachuk, Barkov, Marchand, Pasternak, McAvoy. Like, these are the players that you're looking at every night going, oh my God, those guys are dominating us. Bergeron, they're dominating us. This Leafs team, you could maybe say twice a series, the first line shows up and has a really good game. The second line shows up and has a really good game. Outside of that, it's pretty much mediocre play where you're all demanding everything to be on the third and the fourth line. And if you're just relying on your third and your fourth line, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. You're not going to get that. I agree 100% that you need extra production from these guys. I agree that you need help from your third line. You need help from your fourth line. You need them to contribute. Those are all things that are very important and very helpful for other teams that actually have success. The problem is that when it gets down to the playoffs, it's all on the third and the fourth lines because the first and the second lines just piss off. This is not a very good team here. This is a good team, an average team, a team that'll probably make the playoffs. This is not a team that you're looking at saying is a true contender, a real serious team. This isn't even really from tonight's game that I even have this thought. I don't even think that they played poorly tonight. I don't. I think that they had some really bad shifts. They took some shifts off. It is what it is. There are too many guys who can't finish and help the season along. Who the fuck are you going to bring in then? Seriously. Who are the guys you're bringing in? Lafferty? Lafferty's the answer? Should have re-signed Kerfoot? Like, this is what I don't understand when it comes to this conversation. You need grit. You need to get tougher. You need to add some guys in here who will win battles and go and get involved. And then it's like you're looking at the fourth line guy being like, why doesn't he have 20? Bring fucking Kerfoot back. Like, are we losing our minds here? What the hell are we talking about? What are we talking about? Luigi, it's probably a pretty good point. Bring in Tate. Might turn things around. Well, Denver, Vancouver, you want an answer? Vancouver's good because they have star players who actually give a fuck. They have star players who bought into a system, bought into the way Rick Tocchet coaches. They accepted who he is. He holds people accountable so that the star players can't just piss off. He calls them out in the media. They respond. They say, he's right, I have to be better. He holds them to a high standard. They hold themselves to a high standard, which makes every single person there hold themselves to a higher standard as well. Because now it's actually meaningful when your coach says something about your lack of competitiveness, your lack of committing to every shift that you're playing, all that kind of stuff. You are actually held accountable, and you feel like you need to be in a position where you are going to give it everything you have every single time you step out on the ice. This Leafs team has none of that. It has none of that. You got to a point here where for the first time ever, it was like the biggest story in the world that John Tavares got sat in the second period. Now, a lot of people were pretty upset with that, and I see people going on social media, and all the Marner and Tavares lovers are all crying and holding their hands and looking at their old pictures of Dubas, wishing he was here. But the problem is that for 7 years leading up to now, Sheldon Keefe never did that, never held anybody accountable. So now you go and all of a sudden you're going to change how you're going to approach things and you're going to hold guys accountable. My problem is not that he did that. My problem is that he never did it before. So it feels like that message it just gets mixed in with things because guess what? He's going to now sit that guy. And then the next game, he's probably not going to take minutes away. The next game, he's not going to change anything for that. So it just doesn't feel that different. And then when you watch these guys year after year after year after year not play to that competitive driving atmosphere level that you see, like watch Elias Pettersson. You want to sit here and say like all this bullshit about like, oh, like look at what Vancouver's doing and like look at how Mikheyev and Lafferty play there. That's fine. Watch how Elias Pettersson goes out on the ice. Watch what JT Miller does. Watch the way that those guys conduct themselves. Watch how they go in on the forecheck and finish checks. Watch how they hit guys, are physical. They go in front in scrums. Like they get involved in these things. Now you've added Lindholm. He's just going to fit right in there. And this is a culture that's been instilled from Rick Tocchet because he came in and he said, we're not doing this. We're going to play this way, and if you're not going to buy into my system, if you're not going to buy into the way I want you to play, if you're not going to buy into what I'm now making Vancouver Canucks hockey, you're not going to go out on the ice. And those guys said, fuck it, we're going to do that. Yeah, that's fine. He's in there right now. I'm talking about the bigger picture there, Lefty, about Mikheyev in the doghouse. I got it. The point being that they have a culture around that organization that's bought in from top down. It's the Stars have accepted the way that the coach wants them to play. They play that way, and then everyone else follows in line because they say those guys who make all that money are playing this way. And they buy in. And then all of a sudden you see team success. There are things missing here, for sure. Your defense does need to be better. But don't fucking put this on this GM right now and say that this is the problem. Because guess what? Riley, extended by Dubas. Obviously happy he's here. Nonetheless, extended by Dubas. Brody, signed by Dubas. Gio, traded for and signed by Dubas. Liljegren, extended by Dubas. Kept by Dubas. McCabe, traded for by Dubas. Timmins, traded for and signed by Dubas. Benoit, we've all liked, signed by Tree Living. Lagesson, we all liked, signed by Tree Living. Klingberg, signed, didn't work, the money's gone. Yeah, you could have tried to go out and try to do something else with it, but the other thing that people also just gloss over is that you're pretending like there was some incredible defenseman out there at that $4 million price tag. I keep hearing, well, you could have spent that money and signed so-and-so in the summer. You could have signed someone else in the summer. That's fine. Who? Who was that guy? I'm not saying that there weren't good options out there. I'm just saying there's no clear-cut guy of like, that's who it should have been. I was fine with the signing. I thought that there was actually a positive kind of outlook on what he might be able to bring and how he might be able to help this team. I thought there was a chance that it could work. It didn't. His money's gone. You've got some to play with there. So don't give me that about, oh, the defense is so terrible. This is what this guy did. This is pre-existing. This is who they were. Yeah, things could have been changed, but we also don't know who was available. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at with that. Now, outside of that, this is the star players for me. I just feel like it's not even like they didn't play that well here tonight. It's more just a matter of like, it feels like this is just the identity of this team, and it goes from Keefe into them and into the rest of the team, where it's like, you're okay with losing. I don't know, maybe it's the culture that's been set where it's like regular season doesn't matter. Let's get to the playoffs. That's when it matters. That's fine. Like, in a way, it's fine to think like that, but it just hasn't worked for this team. It shouldn't be something that's you're going to kind of accept, because like, you need to play playoff style hockey. You need to figure out how to play playoff style hockey. 6, asking why you can't see Denver's post. I'm going to assume he blocked you, guy. That's the only thing I could assume. Shocker. Yeah, and I don't know. Like, Moody, this is kind of where I'm at. It's like, this is what we're talking about, where it's like, why are we obsessed with the 5 core? Can we move on from them, get some hardworking players? I don't know. Like, it felt like there needed to be some type of, like, seismic culture change where something was shocked. They decided not to do it. They wanted to bring all these guys back and continue to have them here and run back this core. Then it kind of looks like, okay, is the attention going to go to the coach? Is he going to be the one to change? Are you going to bring someone else in? They don't. They just run everything back from that. And then once it goes there, it's like, it feels like no matter what happens around, you're just not going to get this result that it feels like you want. I don't know. I don't know. Moody, if True Living was any good, he would have done something in Calgary. I don't even know what to say, man. I don't know. Like, the idea that, like, I don't know. Saying, like, True Living, look at the defensive cores that were built. Like, what is the one thing that we always look at with this Leafs team and say, like, this needs to improve here in Toronto? Defense. Look at the D that were brought in Calgary, whether it was for drafting or free agency or trades, like, I look at what they had in Giordano and Brody when they were there. Like, Giordano wins the Norris. Obviously, at this point, those are different players. He was willing to move on from them. He probably made the right decision because now Leafs fans hate him. Like, Leafs fans are sick and tired of those guys, and True Living was willing to move away from them. He gets Hanifin, Zadorov, Tanev, Like who are all the players? Like this is the insane conversation here now too. Who are the 3 players that this Leafs team has been tied to, where people continue to sit here in the chat or on videos or on social media or in the like wherever it is and being like, that's the guy we need. Because I'll tell you exactly who they are. It's Hanifin, it's Zadorov, and it's Tanev. Zadorov obviously gone to Vancouver, but outside of that, it's been those 3 guys all year long. Who the fuck was the one who got them before? It was Brad Treliving from his old team. We got 2 super chats here. I missed the other one, so I want to get to this because I don't want to let these go by. I do appreciate people for sending them. So let's get to our first super chat. All right. Jeff McKay, thank you for the super chat, Jeff. Jeff first says, they played okay, but again, a lot of play along the boards and shooting pucks into the other team. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they played that well. Like, I think that the thing that I'm looking at for this game tonight is just you had a couple defensive breakdowns. You had some spots where you just kind of like lulled yourself to sleep, and then the Islanders take advantage and they score, and the puck's in the back of your net. Look at what happened with the goal by McLean. He scores his first NHL goal. It was a beautiful goal, but he comes out of the penalty box and nobody on the ice has presence in mind of saying, hey, there's a guy coming out of the box. Like, I don't know if Samsonov's not slamming his stick. I don't know if the guys on the bench aren't yelling, if the coaches aren't yelling, if they didn't preface it before they went on the ice. I don't know. I also don't know why the players weren't just aware that was a thing that the guy was coming out. Like, you think you know that? Oh, we're on the power play. How much time is left? Like, you got to have some awareness, and they just fucking go to sleep like they do regularly, and pucks in the back of your net because McLean comes out of the box. He gets an opportunity to go down the ice, gets a pass. Liljegren not aware. Liljegren not able to make the save or like save the puck from escaping the zone. Can't get to it. Puck's in the back of the net. There's another, like, fall asleep. Puck's in the back of your net. Like, I just look at those moments and it's like, Morgan Rielly comes around from behind the net alongside Engvall. Engvall takes the inside track in front. He doesn't get back. He doesn't box him out. Shot comes, rebounds there. Engvall buries. That could have been easily avoided if Morgan Rielly took the inside lane and said, you're going to stay outside and I'm going to box you out. Never boxes him out, never takes a strong defensive approach, never takes a physical approach. Like, these are the things that are happening in this game here tonight and happen continuously where it's like, yeah, this team's obviously really good and they can just create these crazy opportunities and score a bunch of goals a lot. Nobody has ever questioned whether or not this team can score goals. It's that they just give up these high danger chances out of nowhere where a guy's just wide open in the slot, wide open in your blue paint, walking down the alley. Like, even looking at the Barzal goal. Pass goes across to Rielly, who takes the one-timer. Samsonov comes, probably commits a little bit too far across, hits the post. He goes sliding past the net. Rebound pops out into the slot. Mat Barzal comes walking right down Broadway and is able to put in the rebound into the empty net. I'm not saying that can't happen or that he still can't find himself in that spot, but at least, or maybe he can't score, but he at least needs to be significantly more contested. Like, he needs to be contested there. These are the things where you're like, it's team toughness in a sense where stepping up, stepping into the man, taking away time and space, like not letting guys just walk all over you in your own zone. 6, enough saying we saw. We're talking about the game that happened. What are we doing here? What are we doing? Call in. Another super chat here. Jeff McKay, appreciate the super chat. Jeff says, this is not on the GM. Team is soft with a soft coach. Yeah, and I mean, look, here's the other thing. I see Scott saying this, and this is where I would disagree with what Scott's saying to an extent, is like, yeah, did Florida have... Did Calgary, have crazy playoff success where they were going to conference finals every year and they won Stanley Cups? No. But here's the thing. Calgary had a Vezina goaltender. You can't predict that guy's going to just fall off a cliff. He was incredible in Vancouver. He was incredible once he got to Calgary. He was. Like, what, are we just going to deny that? Like, are you just going to deny that that's reality? That's what happened when he was there? He was really good when he got to Calgary. He was really good in Vancouver. I was fine with, like, looking at that. Look at the defense. The other thing people don't really appreciate for what he did in Calgary, and I'm not saying this to just praise Tree Living, like, there's obviously flaws. But we're talking about a team that hasn't had defense. We're talking about a team that hasn't been able to build up a strong defensive core or have some stud goaltender in a while. Probably like decades. And yet, this is a guy who, to me, was able to solve some of those other problems on the previous team that he was on. If you could take that Calgary defensive core and slide them in here and throw Markstrom in net prior to them being picked apart and losing Zadorov, and they're going to lose Tanev and whatever, you bring those guys here, like, this team is drastically better. You improve the defense to even 3/4 of what those guys were, and you're drastically better. That's what this team needs. And what was also going on in Calgary there as well is they just had guys who didn't want to play there. Whether it be the weather, the taxes, the city, I don't know, but they just didn't want to be there. Goudreau, I don't want to be in Calgary. They offered him more money. They offered him a significantly better team. Are we going to deny these facts? They just lost. They left. They just said, we're out of here. We're out. We're done. Matthew Tkachuk, I will not stay here. I'm going to leave. You know what they did? They found a trade. I don't know what happened to Huberdeau. That is a situation that I think universally can be agreed upon, that it needs to be studied by, like, scientists dissecting brains in Calgary and what happened there. Because that fall from grace for Huberdeau was insane. I genuinely thought that was a very good trade for Calgary. It looks like he just hates his life. He probably had never even stepped foot in the city prior to signing. Just fell off a cliff. Mr. B, Zach, sorry, but Bertuzzi has to score more than 6 goals at the 50-game mark or there is no playoffs. I mean, like, guys, some of these statements, like Mr. B, I agree. He has to score more than 6 goals at 50 games. That's fine. Like, I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say it like you're wrong there. I'm just not. But here's the thing. If we're going to say that because he doesn't have more than 6 goals at the 50-game mark, that this team can't make playoffs, there's much bigger issues here anyways. If Tyler Bertuzzi's lack of goal scoring is holding you back from making the playoffs when you have these other guys paid to what they're being played, then your team was never serious anyways. Like I agree he needs to be better, but to go on the flip side and say like, oh, if he's not scoring more than 6, then you're not making the playoffs. Like, this team was a failed group from the beginning. I just disagree with those. I disagree with that. I agree with half of it. I disagree with the other. I appreciate the comment, Mr. B, nonetheless. Ben, given how the Leafs play better against good teams, maybe playing a top seed might work out. Honestly, Ben, maybe. Maybe. People used to say Huberdeau was the most underrated in the league. Him, Barkov just didn't get the love. And I mean, also, guys, let's also just think about this from like a sheer human standpoint. Let's say you live in the state of Florida. You drive a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, you live on a golf course, you have a mansion, you're making nearly double digits in millions of dollars. You have a sick tan. You drive a golf cart to the rink, to practice rink. You don't pay state tax. And nobody bugs you when you go to the rink because there's 5 media members in the entire arena. And then you get traded to the Calgary Flames. And you have to sell your Porsche, your Ferrari, your Lamborghini. You have to sell your golf cart. And you have to buy a Super Duty F-150 that has metal chains on the tires for the winter. And it's dark at 4 p.m. It's minus 50 degrees Celsius in October. And every time you go to the rink and have one game where you don't score a point, you are berated by media members after the fact. I'm not saying like, oh, this is an excuse. But when you're going to talk about transitions and lifestyle changes, there's probably few in the NHL more shocking than going from Florida to Calgary and having that difference of a lifestyle. How you go about your everyday life, how your family lives, just the overall vibe and energy that you face every single day. Right? Like, we're going to talk about these things that's probably realistic. Why do you think Matthew Tkachuk was like, yeah, I want to be traded and I want to go to Florida or the West Coast? Daryl, I'm sorry, man. I haven't been in the truck game for a while. So, Super Duty F-150, I thought that they did. My bad. 250, 350s. LA to Winnipeg spend, probably pretty good. Don, can you imagine if McDavid played in Florida? He might score 250 points. Who knows? Maybe he'd be the happiest person in the world. Mr. B, Zach, are you saying fire Keefe bottom line? Look, here's the problem. I talked to a colleague of mine about this and about what the Leafs do and what they could possibly do. Yeah, Daryl did take that one pretty smack on. Yeah, there you go. 350. Sorry, Daryl. Look. Mr. B, when it comes to Keefe, the conversation that I had was you got to make a change. I thought it should have been made in the summer. as the season progresses, excuse me, and you get further and further along in the regular season, you get further and further along and closer to the trade deadline, closer to the playoffs. The concern for me is this. It feels more and more likely that they will fire Keefe and not bring in someone to close out this season externally. It feels as though if they do that, they would keep Keefe here, or they would fire Keefe and take the people from within Keefe's staff to take over, like a guy like Guy Boucher, a guy to kind of just step in, fill in for the remainder of the season, like what's happened in LA. And I think realistically what you would get out of that is what's traditionally known as or recognized as the new coach bump, where the team kind of has a little jolt in their system for a couple of games, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, where you respond from your coach being the person who the message was sent to, or the message being sent to you via your coach, effectively, where you're saying the coach is done, you've done this to the coach. It's like a mercy firing for the coach because the guy has one of the greatest regular season records in NHL history. I think Keefe has some faults, some serious faults. Realistically, if I watched every coach around the league, all 82 games, we could probably pick out some faults of the other ones as well that would drive us just as insane. I think that there is something very obvious for here with us being Leafs fans facing the teams that we have faced, where it's like you go head-to-head with John Cooper for 7 games, and we've watched him get outcoached. We watched him get outcoached by Bruce Cassidy when he was with the Bruins. Like, we watched these things happen where it was very simple decisions that ended up negatively, where you could pinpoint certain things that you said, that was a coaching decision, that was an outcoaching issue where line matchups were wrong, minute placement or minute usage was way all over the place. Like, these are the things that I was looking at where I'm like, okay, you can pinpoint those. Over 82 games, he's probably a fine coach. He's probably a good coach. Reality is this, for me. You need a different mindset to come into this team. It can be a guy who sends the exact same message, okay? But the difference has to be how they send the message. Accountability. Are they going to be tougher? Are they going to hold guys to a standard? And people can be pissed about this all they want. I know Joe Hill was all pissed off about the accountability conversation and all fired up online. You want an example of what works and to stop being pissy about it and saying, well, you'll just lose games if you do that. Look at the Vancouver Canucks, okay? Bench JT Miller, publicly call them out. Bench guys like Pettersson, Besser, publicly call them out. Publicly call out defense. And it's not like you're going there and berating them in the media. But the reality is that you're going there and saying, we need more of this guy. He hasn't been good enough. He hasn't been up to the standard that you're asking about. You're demanding these players who expect to be treated like all-stars to actually play like all-stars. So when they don't, and they don't show up, and they don't try, and they don't give an effort, or they don't buy into the system, then you respond. You can take away shifts. You can take time away where they sit in on the bench for a full period. You could say something about it in the media, but then you follow through. The mindset of these guys in some of the other places, like Berube when he got to St. Louis and how he implemented his strategy there. Realistically, it could have been the exact same game plan as the guy before. It just comes across different. It's a different voice, saying it differently and implementing it differently, but it could be the exact same thing. I'm not going to speak on that. I wasn't necessarily watching as closely at that point in time in terms of what the St. Louis Blues did to change, but some of those things are just missing. And it feels like having a new voice in that locker room to lead this conversation could be that piece where it's like, okay, as good as your X's and O's are, That's not the voice we need anymore. And the other thing on top of this, Sheldon Keefe is like one of the longest tenured coaches, one of, not the longest, so don't pull that as a quote, one of the longest tenured coaches currently existing in the NHL. Think about all the different teams and how long these coaches have lasted with them. The only ones that I could really think of that are like stick out to me as guys who have made it happen and been there for a while is a guy like Cooper, obviously in Tampa. But outside of that, like there's a lot of turnover. Bruce Cassidy leaving Boston, goes to Vegas, right? Jim Montgomery, Rick Bowness, who were Paul Maurice. These guys are all rotating teams. They go different spots, and then you just implement a new message into an area where all of a sudden they're just a little bit more. They sound different than the last guy, I guess is the best way to put it. Peter Voracek. Now that's a name. I have not thought about that name in a while. Michael, good pull. But yeah, like those guys is other teams aren't afraid to change. I just don't understand why this Leafs team is. That's kind of where I'm at. And I think that at this point, when you've had this guy here for as long as you have and it just hasn't worked, I don't understand. This is the problem I have is I just don't understand why you continue to go back to the same thing. I don't even think tonight's game was that bad. I also pull up Money Puck here and like, yeah, you can't just look at this and you lost the game, but it's like you won the deserve to win a meter. You had more expected goals than Islanders. The problem was that you just gave them good opportunities and you did stupid things. And there was moments where you just like went to sleep yourself. That's not good enough. It's just not. It's a tough night tonight. Also, for those people complaining about Nye saying send him to the Marlies or whatever, he had the highest expected goals on the Leafs tonight by a very large, or expected goals percentage, 5-on-5. Which, by the way, is expected goals for versus expected goals against. He was 1.05 expected goals for, 0.17 against. And yet, like, this is a guy people are like, well, he doesn't have the points. Bertuzzi, 65%. So, I don't know. It's a tough night. Tough night for this team. Let's get to last couple of segments here. Let's get to our play of the game, and then let's get to our grades of the game. But first and foremost, play of the game. All right. Play of the game for me. You guys drop yours in the chat as well. I want to see what you guys have. Play of the game is... You know what? Play of the game is Simone Benoit hitting Mat Barzal and immediately sticking up for himself and fighting Bo Horvat. Good on Bo Horvat. Benoit takes a run at him. That's fine. You got to stick up for your guy. He's your best player. We all know that. He's your stud. Like, that's what your team's about. And Bo Horvat goes in, jumps in. I got no problem with that at all. And then, additionally, Simone Benoit goes there and just throws bombs for a while. This guy is beloved here in Toronto. Block shots all night. Really good on the penalty kill. Pretty good defensively. Being happy with his level of play. And I love that he's just taking runs at guys to start the game. And throughout the game, he is just fully bought into everything going on, or start the period, sorry, fully bought in. Like, he's ready to go. Here's rearing up. And by the way, that's to start the second period. That's 40 seconds of time into the second period, and 7 seconds later, the Leafs score. 7 seconds later. And people want to complain about needing goal scoring, needing all this. And then we watch these guys who give this team energy, give the arena energy, give the fans life. And then we complain about them because they don't score 70 goals too. You need some gritty guys who aren't afraid and are going to stick up for each other and themselves when the going gets tough. I think that's what these guys bring. And I was pretty pumped up to see that from Simone Benoit tonight. That's my play of the game. Honorary mention, Mitch Marner's goal. Beautiful pass by JT, backhand, felt like it was like a no-look backhand pass, tape to tape for Marner as he's cutting into the zone, kind of gives a little fake, pulls it to the backhand, pulls it back to the forehand, and then roofs it with kind of just like a perfectly placed shot from in tight there where he's got, I was going to call him Samsonov. Sorokin, he's kind of got him biting a little bit because he's waiting, thinking he's going backhand, potentially going back across the ice. He's got the defender down and then pulls it back to the forehand, gets the shot off. It's a great shot. It's a great play. It's a great move. That's an honorary mention. It was a beautiful goal there tonight, but my play of the game still goes and stands with Simone Benoit. That guy's a stud. All right, let's get to our grades of the game, close this thing out.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Play grade of the game, for me tonight. Going with like a... it's hard. I'm going to go with like a B minus. I feel like there was a lack of intensity and energy that we probably needed through the full 60 minutes of the game tonight that just wasn't there. I feel like there was a little bit of an inconsistency from the start of the game to the end of the game. I think the power play looked better, but I think that there's still, it's just awareness, right? Like, this team is never really being about, do they have the talent? Do they have like these other pieces? It's like you just fall asleep at times. And when you talk about the way that this team plays defensively, whether you like it or not, analytically, they're actually pretty decent defensively. Like, they are a good, decently structured defensive team in their own zone. They're not terrible. They're not great. They're just like they're good. The thing that they're missing is some of the intangibles that are taken on into the playoffs, where it's like, or to grit through some of these wins, where it's what guys like Benoit and what guys like McKay bring. They just have this level of laziness to them and like we don't give a fuck meter where it's like, oh, whatever, it's game 48 in February. Like, we don't care. We were just at the All-Star game. And it's like, well, guys, like, for sure, not every game's going to be that great, but you do this like 35 games of the year. Like, that's the problem. People look at Colorado or Boston or whatever and be like, well, the Avs lost tonight, so they must fucking suck. And it's like, because they're trying to compare it to Toronto. And it's like, well, no, because the Avs played a good game tonight. They just lost to the Rangers, whatever. Okay, they lost to the Coyotes earlier this season. Well, guess what? They only take like 10 games of the season where they kind of play shitty. Or they play like 8 games of the season where they kind of play shitty. And they just have like the rest of them where it's like, you know what? We just didn't have it tonight. Or like, we just couldn't beat that team because even though we showed up. This Leafs team is fully just, you could just watch laziness. You turn on the TV and you can be like, I guarantee you, I guarantee for every game, next game is on Wednesday night. I guarantee you turn on the game, you will watch at least 5 minutes of the 60 minutes that you watch where you can say, cumulative, not in a row or straight, but 5 cumulative minutes minimum that you can say about this Leafs team, that was lazy. Whether it's forechecking, back checking, if it's in the defensive zone, if it's plays that they're making in the neutral zone where they're trying to make tape-to-tape passes or through passes or whatever, like, you're going to look at those, trust me, you're going to say, that's lazy hockey. And it's just, that's who they are. That's who they've been, and there's no accountability for it. So this is what pisses me off. Because when I look at guys like Bertuzzi or Domi, I don't see laziness in their game. Do I see lack of production? I would like that. Yes. Do I see a lack of finish? Yes. I would like some more of that from those guys. But I don't see laziness. And the thing that pisses me off is that maybe the guy's not executing the defensive structure or the forecheck or the back check exactly how Sheldon Keefe would like. But that guy doesn't cheat you on effort. That guy doesn't take shifts off. He doesn't get lazy. He doesn't skip out on a block shot or a forecheck or a back check or whatever it might be or a net front battle. They don't do that. They don't take those shifts off. And that's what I'm talking about when I say I like this from these guys. Obviously, I want more. But there is a level of laziness that you can see throughout most of the rest of the lineup that is just unacceptable and not something that's going to be conducive to winning long term. That's kind of where I'm at. B- for me here tonight. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's terrible. I just think it could have been better. It is what it is. Leafs fans, thank you guys so much for tuning in here tonight. I appreciate it. For those of you who are new subscribers to the channel, thank you very much. For those of you who are watching and haven't, whether you're watching this live right now and aren't subscribed, if you're watching it after the fact and haven't subscribed, please take 2 seconds and hit that subscribe button. We're currently at, as you can see there, 1290. We're trying to get it up to 1300. So please keep running it up. Please get that number higher. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate you guys showing up after these games, during games, whatever it might be. I appreciate everyone for watching videos as well. But while you're at it, hit that like button, subscribe here to the channel, turn on notifications. Let's run it up. Let's get to 2,500 subscribers by the playoffs. You guys think you could do that? 2,500. For those of you who actually also might know some other people that might want to watch this, send this to them. You hit 50 likes there as well. I can't go without doing this. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the support. There we go. Smelling salts are rocking. Thank you guys so much. Look forward to seeing you on Wednesday night after the Leafs' next game. Hopefully a little bit more of a positive mood to break that one down. Thank you guys. I'm out of here. This has been Game 48 of the Leafs regular season, losing 3-2 to the Islanders. Keep going.